All right, welcome to another episode of No Investment Advice. We've got Trung Phan here, lead writer at The Hustle, Elon Musk's best friend, and a lot of people's best friend right now on Twitter. What's going on, Trung?
I'm good, brother.
And we also got Jack Butcher, NFT King, working on the metaverse. What's happening, dude?
I'm good, mate. How is everybody today?
Go on, Trung. You might have to tee this up because it's been a crazy few days for us.
Jack knows as a new father, but man, my kid's 3.5 years old. I thought he was past like shitty sleeps, but it just never ends, right? They basically every time a kid has a new development milestone, it just messes up their sleep schedule. And I know each one that happens, right? Is like and the latest one that happened with my kid is he busted me and my wife going out to dinner one night. We had a date lined up a couple weeks ago and he sniffed it out. He's like, my sister was here. So he's like, well, what's she doing here? Is she gonna like be here to babysit or whatever? And like, we're about to go out to dinner and he wakes up. He knew something was up. So we're literally about to leave the door and he comes banging out the room and like bawling his eyes out. And he's like, and we're like, okay, listen, we should have told you like my sister's babysitting. He's like, not having any of it, right? So ever since then, that was like 3-4 weeks ago, he's been waking up in the middle of the night, going outside to make sure we're around. Bro, these kids.
Wait, how old is he, Trung?
3.5 almost. So like, the reason I bring it up is I'm actually super wired right now. It's because I basically had this entire thing of cold brew because my kid was up at 3 a.m.
Looks like a milk carton, dude.
I just have these in my fridge for days like this where like my kid wakes up in the middle of the night and I know the rest of my day is going to be completely jacked up. So I just got so caffeinated up until like 1 and then crash so hard around 2 or 3. So let's milk it, man. I'm caffeinated as F right now.
NIA coffee coming soon, man. We can't be. That's a missed opportunity there right now.
By the drip.
Well, Jack
by the drip, exactly. So look, we got to start off. There's only one place to start off because we're recording this just before the finals of the Euros. The last time we spoke about England bringing it home. And Jack, how you feeling today, mate? Because it's a day after we just qualified for the finals.
Just euphoric. It's hard to describe, mate. It's otherworldly.
Hold on. How badly do you guys wish you're in England right now?
Very, very badly.
Yeah, I have to say, I definitely looked at flights this morning. I was.
Oh, are you serious?
No, I mean, I looked at it, but I mean, the truth, I've been waiting to go home since the pandemic. Like, I haven't gone home still. And I'm waiting for all the regulations to go away. And if I went right now, I'd be in quarantine for 5 or 10 days. So it wouldn't make any sense anyway. But man, it was.
Well, so tell me about
incredible.
these group chats you're in. How many different group chats with your buddies from back home are you in? Seriously, each of you, how many?
I got 2 main ones: university lads, and then the boys I went to secondary school with.
And what about you, Bilal?
Yeah, I probably got similar. I've got like the uni friends, college for me, which is like sixth form college, so it's like high school, and then there's also like a kind of little mini Google crew that are in London.
How strange is it that they're all getting hammered? Hammered. Is everybody just getting? Are you listening? Are you looking at these message chats and just like you could tell people getting drunker and drunker? Like the comments are getting more and more obscene.
Well, the memes
and,
get crazier and crazier as well because they start off with like funny, playful memes, and by like 2 a.m. I'm like, oh, this is getting deep even for me, and I'm like, oh, this is touching a nerve. But yeah, it's been.
Did you guys have a couple of drinks? Are you guys having drinks?
Not yesterday because I watched it at home, but this weekend I'll definitely be out to watch it, man. It's gonna be. I mean, look, we don't want to speak the whole time about it, but man, like it feels so good. It's the first time we've been in the final since 1966, I think. So way before both of us.
Man, you know those articles, things that didn't exist in 1960s, in the last time that England was in a major final is coming out.
Yeah.
You know, what shitcoins didn't exist in 1966?
The euro didn't exist. That's true. the non-gold pegged currency world didn't exist.
You know that tweet's going out, bro.
Yeah, live in the flesh. But yeah, the one thing I will say, yeah, I mean, Italy, strong team, but like, we're at home. So, I mean, I don't know, man. By the time this comes out, we'll know if we won or not. So either way, it's been a big few days.
I'm definitely stealing that tweet so people can see it in real time. Shit coins that didn't exist in 1966. And then I'll put like Dogecoin, Shibu, the Euro.
And the Euro.
Yeah.
That's class.
Now everyone will know. Obviously Trung is the king of Twitter right now, but once in a while, when I get a little ghost written tweet that comes out from a group chat, I feel very proud.
Yeah. There we go, bro. Well, dude, everybody can be in on this joke when it happens. That's
it. So listen, man, talking of that. So yeah, we'll wish us luck, everyone who's listening. We'll know by the time this comes out, but let's move on. So today we're going to talk about Andy Jassy, who's, I don't even know how to say his dude's name. I hope I'm saying it right. Like last time when I was talking about, what was that? Matic, I was calling it for an hour, like the footballer. And it's actually Matic. But anyway, Andy Jassy's taken over at Amazon. We've got some follow-up from last time. Trung's going to break down the people that have launched from Joe Rogan. We're going to talk about some of the best ad campaigns ever and the longest ad campaign running ever, which is Absolut. And then we got some merch updates and edge of the internet stuff as well. So let's just kick it off, man. Because Trung, in our group chat, we were talking about Andy Jassy taking over from Jeff Bezos. Now, again, the richest man in the world, his wealth has gone up to $211 billion, which is mental. But yeah, it kind of got us chatting about our first days at work. And you said you had a crazy story.
Let's talk about Andy Jassy a bit. So Andy Jassy used to run Amazon Web Services, which is the cloud computing division of Amazon. So it does $55 billion a year, I think, in 2020. And it's still growing about 50%, which is just bonkers, right? If you actually put like a SaaS multiple on that company, called 40, 50 times revenue. I actually don't know what SaaS is right now. People call it 30, 40. That's a $2 trillion company on its own, right?
And it's not like you work for one and have a stock in HubSpot or anything like that.
No, exactly, right? Well, exactly. That's the joke that I was just memeing dumb Andy Jassy jokes, but like one that I did was just pretty funny was he used to work for a $2 trillion company, Amazon Web Services, and now he works for Amazon, which is only worth $1.7 trillion. And it's like, what's the big lesson? Like, leadership requires sacrifice. No, but what's so funny, dude? This guy's on the job for 2 days. His first day as CEO, Amazon's market cap goes up by 100 billion. I would just quit. If I'm Andy Jassy, I'm like, done. Bro, I'm out. Who's next?
Isn't it like the opposite of Steve Ballmer when he left it like went up?
No, it was flat for 15 years. Jassy goes on the job. It's up 100 billion on the first day. It probably had to do with the fact that the U.S. government actually is giving them another shot at this big Defense Department cloud contract called JEDI. But I just want to have some quick notes about Jassy. So the Wall Street Journal had a great article about him. So he ran Amazon Web Services, which is basically the engine for the company now. And so it's not really a big surprise that he's the CEO. But so internally, they describe Jassy as like the most Jeff Bezos-like individual, right? So like Amazon has an internal executive team called the S team. And over the past few decades, everybody's like, anyone that's gone through the S team, like Andy Jassy is like the closest to Bezos in terms of how he thinks about the company. His temperament is a lot different. Bezos is a total asshole. If you read the new book by Brad Stone about Amazon, it's just dozens of anecdotes about Bezos just being the biggest douchebag ever, which isn't surprising. But apparently Andy Jassy is really nice. He one of his go-to phrases is the word "nice" in emails. And but the last anecdote I'll add about Amazon Web Services is internally. I mean, I want to know if Bilal has any thoughts on this. Is when they bring people in for meetings, they have something called like the Wheel of Death, where they just randomly select somebody in the meeting and they have them give like information about their department. Did this ever happen at Google, dude? Like
no, that sounds like the opposite. No, I mean, I think the cultures are so different, right? Like everyone at Google's like super nice and trying to be all extra inclusive. And I think someone would be like, oh, this triggered me or whatever. So I don't know if that would work.
You don't think the wheel of death is consistent
named.
with the...
They'll come up with some ridiculous
But you
name.
can do it on all different colors though, like in the Google colors.
Rainbow.
The designer
does that
Jack.
too, actually. It's actually a really, objectively, it's a brilliant move, right? It's the only way to keep everybody accountable. It's like how Harvard Business School actually does. Harvard Business School has a case study method where everybody has to read like this 30-page study and then come in with ideas because the teacher like selects them at random. So if you don't have an opinion, like you fucking lose all your points.
You get called out. Nicely.
I just got fined for swearing, but it's not a shocker. Andy Jassy is a Harvard Business School graduate. So there you go, man. That's all.
You were writing about this, about the MBAs taking over, right? Because people, especially in tech, kind of shit on MBAs a lot of the time. And
dude, so
all of the top
Andy Jassy,
CEOs,
Harvard Business School, CEO of Amazon, Satya Nadella, the CEO of Microsoft, is Chicago MBA. Sundar Pichai is a Wharton MBA and CEO of Google, obviously. And who was the other one? Apple. Yeah, Tim Cook is a Duke MBA. And then Mark Zuckerberg's not an MBA, but the joke was he once said, "I want to fuck the Winklevoss twins in the ears." So that's some shit MBAs would say. I can't be fined for that because that's a quote.
All right, so Trung, but yeah, thanks for the background on Jassy. Actually, one question on that, because you probably know a bit more about this. I've heard anecdotally that Amazon's web services is basically the only, that's the profit center of the company, right? Because the margin's actually there versus the crazy margins of retail. And for years, they didn't make a profit by purpose because they were just trying to grow. Like, do you know much about that? Because there's talk that if they did get spun out, like you said, they would just be worth even more. And like everyone who holds Amazon stock would actually be kind of happy about that.
Yeah, I agree with that sentiment for sure, where they would probably be richer if it was a standalone, because to your point, it contributes 60%, I think, about the operating profits at Amazon, even though its revenue is...
You say 60? 6-0?
60 operating profits.
Oh, damn. Yeah.
But it's only about 10 to 15% of the top line. But the big business, the one that couldn't be separated, which is minting money for Amazon, which is like 80% margins, is the ad business. Because they just stuck the ad business on top of retail, right? And that's doing about $20 billion a year. But so I think the bigger thing you mentioned was the first days on the job stories. I think it's funny because Andy Jassy obviously had a first day on the job, increased the market cap of Amazon by $100 billion. So I wanted to talk about my first days on the job for an internship I had with Scotiabank.
I'm sure it was very similar, Trung.
So let me give some background here. We're gonna pull up some emails because you guys are gonna laugh. I got to see if I can set up this joke well. So Scotiabank is one of Canada's four big banks. I don't remember, but there's four big banks in Canada. Scotiabank actually is where Elon Musk had an early internship in the mid 90s. So if you Google Elon Musk, Scotiabank is one of his first internships. And he was so aghast at how finance was done back in the day and how bureaucratic filled these institutions were, that his experience at Scotia actually was one of the reasons why he ended up doing PayPal. He's like, these guys are dinosaurs, right? Like he apparently went in to his boss and had like a amazing trade that was guaranteed to make money. And in hindsight, it did. And they told him, hey, sorry, you got to kick that up like 30 levels if we're going to do that. But anyways, the reason why I bring this up is this. Can I share a screen?
Yeah, you should be able to share. Go on.
All right. Well, I don't want to totally out this guy, but I'm just going to do this thing. Yeah, you guys won't be able to see this. Okay, here we go. All right. So this is funny. Actually, I'll do this. I'll share the screen. All right, this is so I'm on an internship for corporate banking, which is basically just lend money to corporates instead of individuals. And I probably can't show all this actually, but whatever, we'll blank some of it out. So the thing is this, banking internships are a joke, right? When you start as a bank intern, all that's happening is that they're just making you do shit work, right? You're filling in Excel files. And this is the way the whole thing works. All the managing directors had to do it when they started the business. So in their head, they're like, listen, we're just going to pass along this ridiculous like a practice of just filling in data sheets, right? And Litquidity, the meme account, just makes fun of this nonstop, right? It was hilarious. So I knew I was going to get this shit work, but whatever. I'm a total idiot, right? Like this is a job you go to the office for. Like you can tell I'm not an office guy. Like I hate the office. I'm allergic to the office. So basically on like my second or third day at the job, I knew I was going to get a dumbass request to do some data entry. And I get the request. And the guy he emails me and he goes, you're probably going to blank out his name, or maybe we don't end up showing this, but the email I get asks, hey man, can you check the US Census Bureau and tell me the population of Canada for 2013? I'm like, first of all, bro, you can Google this. You don't need to ask me to do this. It's so obvious what you're doing. You have no other job to give me because all of this is bullshit work. So you're asking me to Google something that you could have done. It would have taken you less time to find out what the population of Canada was if you Googled yourself. So I'm triggered. I'm fucking pissed right now. I'm like, this dumbass request just came across my plate. So I'm like, all right, whatever. I'll do it. It's my job. So I reply to him and I go, hey man, I go to him. I go, this is the joke. I go, hey man, is The Onion a reliable source? According to them, there are 33,400,076 Canadians in 2013. And obviously it's a joke. The Onion is not a real publication. It's a joke publication. But clearly this is where the real joke comes in. The guy replies, hey man, don't even show this because I can't pull up. He goes, hey dude, is The Onion a real source? Why are you going to agricultural media sources for this information? So this idiot doesn't even know what agricultural. The Onion is. He goes, bro. All right. So to summarize, I go to my second or third day on the job at Scotiabank, an office job. It was my last office job ever. I never, ever have suited up and gone into an office wearing a suit. And on the second or third day, unlike Andy Jassy, who added $100 billion of market cap, I was asked to discover the population of Canada in 2013. But these are the jobs that are being tasked to people. And I tell this guy, it's 33 million. The source is The Onion. And him not getting the joke, he goes, hey man, what is this? I've never heard of this source. Why are you? I
love how like you've been trolling since for the same trunk. We all know. We all know you've been doing it since your first job.
Well, dude, that's when I knew that job wasn't for me. When the guy didn't know what The Onion was.
This is how you're getting a 1 trillion % APR and DeFi, cutting out all of these emails.
Exactly, right? Anyways, that's it, man. That's my long-winded way of saying that I'm not meant for the office. Well, let me ask you guys. Jack, have you ever had to wear a suit to the office?
Not pictures and stuff when I was working in advertising, yeah. To
How much did you hate it? Again. How much do you hate it?
Oh, yeah, I hate it, man. Like, Celia tells me every time even when we go to a wedding or something, she's like, why are you acting so strange?
That's like, so funny.
I can't wear a suit.
Bro, do you have like one collar. Do you have like one like really expensive suit that you just wear?
My wedding suit, yeah, that's it.
Okay.
I just wear that to everything.
What about you, Bilal? Tell me about your suit experiences.
I actually did an internship at Citibank back in the day as well. So
Did you ever get asked about the population of the UK?
No, but it was the most. I mean, I was like, why are they using fax machines? Like, what the hell is this? What's going on here? And then the one thing I will say is though, for my Google, it's kind of embarrassing, but like whatever. For my Google interview, I knew like nothing about the work culture. Yeah, like I knew about the company, I turned up and I'm like, they're like, what's the future of Google look like? I'm like, Chrome OS and all this shit. Like the people interviewing me didn't know anything about, because I like knew about that world, but I didn't know that everyone wears their own clothes. So I turned up in a suit and tie for my interview, which is kind of a bit of a red flag, right? Like you're like, oh, you didn't even read the page. Like
hold up, what year was this?
2009.
You showed up at an interview at Google in a suit and tie in 2009?
Yeah, it was crazy. Bro, yeah, it's funny. I got a job, to be fair, but...
Hold on a second, man. Okay, hold on. Jack, I need you to roast him a second. You need to roast him.
I have to say, the other thing is, like, if I did that interview now, I probably wouldn't have got a job based on me not doing the research. And now, as you guys know, this is a funny thing between us. Like, we obviously prepare for the podcast. I'm pretty well prepared now, 10, 12 years later. But if you saw me as a student, I was like super last minute. I'm still pretty last minute, but I at least like prepare.
No, but dude, I just hold on a second. I
organized,
just can't get over the fact that you wore a suit and tie to a freaking Google meeting.
I was walking
Maybe they
around.
thought
I'm
it was
like,
ironic.
everyone's pretty. Yeah, they were like, oh, at least he's making an effort.
Oh, actually, no. I think Jack nailed it. They must think so your joke is just as good as my
so
onion
meta,
joke.
so many levels above.
That's it. They must have thought I was playing 4D chess and I
Like
was
Step
playing
Brothers,
checkers, mate.
the tuxedo. You show up in a tuxedo.
Yeah, so dude, actually, you must have stood out so much. They must have had 1,000 candidates for that job. And they're like, guys, what do you think about the candidates? Yo, so this dude Bilal, hilarious guy, comes in wearing a Brooks Brothers suit.
That was fun. And then I will say on the first week, obviously by then, like I'd done enough research. And then there's a famous story that my friend Pete, who's actually moving here, I've known him since my first Noogler week, as we call it. He's this Canadian guy. And he basically he told everyone at his wedding recently, we were in his wedding in Italy, and he basically said that when I first met Bilal at Google, I thought he was a drug dealer. I don't know. And he's like, it's semi-racist because I came from like I had a proper East London accent, brown guy. But I have to admit, I turned up with a BlackBerry, right? Like, because it was January 2010. I'm like pinging away like on my BlackBerry, and apparently I used to use this Vicks. Like, do you guys have Vicks here? It's like the
sniffing stuff.
The sniffing stuff, right? So I used to have a block. No, so I was like constantly sniffing this in our training, and he would just look over and he's like, "Why is that guy like?"
Yo, bro, we need more Bilal Google stories, bro. Yo, dude, you've been shortchanging yourself.
No,
These
that was funny. That
Actually,
was a
I
funny
have a
time.
quick. My last heuristic that I'll put before we move on to real media stuff is the thing I've always used, not for myself because I'm not involved in that trade, but if I'm ever at a club or bar and my friend's like, "Hey man, do you know like where I can get some party favors?" I'm like, "Listen, not for me. However, if that's really what you're looking for, look for people wearing flower patterned shirts. That should get you where you're looking for." And I swear to God,
it always works.
Me, I point people in that direction. It's just an intuition I have, and it's like 10 out of 10 hit rate. It's like a perfect hit rate. If some dude's wearing a floral pattern shirt, he either himself is dealing or knows someone that does deal.
The Miami Vice all the way down.
No, seriously, bro. Anyways, that's
hilarious.
That's my heuristic. Not personal anecdote, our friend's anecdote, but you guys can do with that what you want. Not life advice. Not life advice.
Yeah, definitely not life advice. Definitely not investment advice. All right. That was funny, man. All right, well, let's move on. Was there anything else? Jack, did you have any other ones from your early days there?
I got first day of work stories, but they're going to be long. So let's move on.
Should we save one for next time? We'll save it for next one.
Sure.
Then.
I love it.
Nice
I think we covered the suits. I think we covered the suit thing real well. That's funny. Great, man.
All right, cool. So let's talk a little bit about Joe Rogan and kind of the people he launched, because it came up in the last episode, and Trung said he was going to do a little research, and we can chat a little bit more about that.
It wasn't a ton of research. It was just basically looking at my Stitcher app and seeing which ones I had saved on my phone. But I think Joe Rogan launched Jocko Willink, Eric Weinstein, Lex Friedman, Jordan Peterson, and what was the other name I had there?
Weinstein Brothers, you said.
Yeah, Brett Weinstein. So 5. Dude, this guy literally, I mean, remember when people talk about the intellectual dark web? I mean, he was basically seeding those individuals. Not to say that he necessarily agreed with everything they said, or that even the intellectual dark web. For those that don't know, that was basically a descriptive term for the people I mentioned and guys like Sam Harris. But now they actually don't kind of go together. And there's been a lot of disagreement within these individuals.
Think boys,
guys,
right, Trump?
Yeah, think boys. Ultimate think boys. But yeah, man, Rogan basically going on his podcast led to all these individuals' careers just
they all blew up.
The roof. Blew up, man.
I will say, like, Jocko, I think, was also partly Joe Rogan, and then like Tim Ferriss, he also says as well. And but no, I guess the bigger point here is like so many people didn't understand. I actually listened to an episode of Joe Rogan being interviewed like a few days ago. He doesn't do many of those, and everyone assumed that when he would go to Spotify, he'd become smaller in a way because lots of people just drop off. Yeah. Right. But he said that so many people that were just in traditional media would, and like in the traditional world, finally took him as like, who the hell is this guy at that level? And, people like us who might follow it a little bit closely, we already know the scale and impact he was having. But he said the actual big changing point was when it was in Forbes, because money talks. So like when people heard 100 to 200 million, people were like, oh, wow, this is as big a deal.
Who interviewed him? I got to listen to this.
It was Saga and this lady who they're like this political duo.
Oh, yeah. Oh, they're huge, man.
Saga and something.
What's his name?
They were part of The Hill, I think. And
Balaji tweeted something where that podcast you mentioned jumped over the New York Times Daily podcast, which is massive.
That's it.
And he called it the flippening. That we have to mention Balaji once a day here, bro, or once a podcast. So this podcast you mentioned, that I don't even know the name of, but I know exactly how big it is because, I mean, it goes back to what Jack talked about last week, right? There's all these different fractured media diets now. But this group now is kind of broken out, and these two hosts. I got to listen to that, man. That's amazing.
Actually, I'd say that they really blew up with Joe Rogan too, because they were part of another bigger media company and they wanted to leave, but they were kind of scared. And Joe was like, what are you talking about? Like, I'm going to help promote you, obviously. My God. And what I will say, I don't know their show that well, but it's basically I forgot the woman's name, but she's more left-leaning. Saga, I think the other guy's name is, he's more right-leaning. But their whole point is nuanced discussions, and like they're trying to be objective about stuff. And so I've only heard a couple episodes, but it's similar to like what people like about Joe's podcast, that he has people on the left, people on the right. But I think the mainstream media paints him more right than he probably actually is. So,
well, hold on. Let me add this about Joe. I found this out reading. So to your point, he's kind of been more mainstream. New York Times just wrote a long piece on him. And they, I mean, obviously they kind of wrote it in an asshole way, like describing him like as this, like you said, right? Like the guy with crazy, quacky ideas. I'm like, dude, kick rocks, man. But anyways, they brought up something that I didn't realize this. So this kind of blew me away, even though it made total sense. But he has his own tab in Spotify, right? Like you look at all the different categories, like R&B music, like podcast as an entire category, or country as an entire category, and then it goes Joe Rogan, and I'm like, dude, I didn't
realize that.
Dude, think about that, right? That's huge.
I have to say, I have been a huge Joe Rogan fan, especially doing my own podcast before. And as soon as he went on Spotify, I just stopped like listening to as many, because I just don't go to Spotify for actually. But yesterday I listened to the first time in ages with Quentin Tarantino was on it. I listened to Chappelle actually, but Tarantino was on it, which was amazing, because I was like, man, this is 3 hours with one of the genius directors of our time. Like it's pretty incredible, man. And actually, one other thing I'm going to add on Joe Rogan is there's a guy called Andrew Schultz. Have you guys heard of him? He's a comedian.
You've mentioned before. He's a comedian that really cracked the internet.
Digital,
right?
Exactly. And he would say himself, like, it was Charlemagne first, who he does a podcast with, that really put him out there. And then Joe Rogan blew him up. And now he's got the top 5 or 10 Patreon in the world across all categories. It's the number one comedy Patreon. I will say, if anyone hasn't heard of him or watches his stuff, his comedy is like as flagrant as it gets. Like his whole style is what's something we're not supposed to laugh about, and I'm going to find a way to make it funny. But like, I think him and his little crew are a great example, because they're completely independent. They've done deals with like Netflix and stuff, but now on their own terms. And he's someone who isn't an intellectual think boy. He's like, someone who's a creative, who's become like a superstar podcaster. And, he sells out world tours on comedy now as well. So, man, like Joe Rogan is he's building all these people up.
He's the kingmaker.
100%. All right. Anything else on that, Jack? Do you have any thoughts on that, mate, before we talk about ad campaigns, which I think you definitely know a lot about?
I think Jack wanted to use this as a springboard into his edge of internet.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah, I'm not gonna say this name that we have in the document. I'm gonna wait until we have a little bit more of a formal announcement. But the idea that like a person is now a company, or a person is a business, or a person is just like a media entity, in the same way that Joe Rogan is getting paid to launch products. I can't remember where I read this, but it's like, if you're going to pay for a slot on the Joe Rogan podcast, like make sure your hosting for your website is beefed up, because people are just going to absolutely destroy it.
Game
the traffic
over.
You're going to get is crazy. In the same way, like it feels like Joe Rogan having a stake in the growth of, if he discovers a little comedian, for example, and wants to give him part of the platform, like it's way more aligned with what his audience are there to listen to. And you don't have to sit through like 6 minutes of ads, right? It's like, how can I borrow Joe Rogan's platform and Joe Rogan get some upside from, telling my story or getting my story out there. So it feels like maybe because he's with Spotify now, that's less likely to happen, but that does feel like a change in tide of sorts. The same way, like we talked about the Jay-Z Ethereum stuff, like ownership of, you're not necessarily going to have to monetize through like selling product. Like, comedians and people have to sell like merch and tickets and all of that stuff. But if they're like valuable entities unto themselves, like imagine if Joe Rogan had 1% of the upside of Jordan Peterson over the course of his career. It's a crazy thought, right? And
yeah,
that,
it's
to
like
me,
how
feels
music
like that.
as well used to have that, right? Like, I mean, Jay-Z comes through, then he gets Rockefeller Records, or I don't know the full story there, but and then Kanye comes through, then Kanye has his thing, Eminem comes through and he gets 50 Cent. So it's though I guess there's two counter trends here. One is where we're getting rid of those middlemen altogether to a certain extent. But then there's this other trend coming, which is like, oh, I can actually get upside if the incentives align. And that's quite an interesting way of doing it.
It's like it's a real nuanced difference between like just being a rent seeker and being a like actual asset to the other half of the transaction. So I read this thing a couple of days ago where for every dollar of upside a musician creates today, label captures 88 cents of it.
Crazy.
So they get paid 12 cents on the dollar for their music. And you can make the argument that, labels can get them on the radio and get them to book tours and all of that kind of stuff. But when you get to like a Jay-Z scale or, when you're at that level, I don't know, maybe there's still some probably bureaucratic cost and, there's things that you have to do. But a lot of these big artists have been like beating this drum for a long time, right? That labels are just skimming way too much off the top.
Yeah, like an admin fee, essentially. Like if you think an admin fee in traditional terms is like 20-30% normally, right? Right. And that's maybe on the high end. Like sometimes it's a 5-10% processing fee, which is slightly different. So there's still obviously some like admin going on, like if you want to just bucket into that. But it's different to, we were just talking about this a few days ago, actually, like music in the 90s, right? Like there was, the only way you'd get that out is you need to have the relationship with the radio, it needs to be playing on there, and then eventually like needs to be on MTV, all that sort of stuff. And now it's like 90% of it, 95% of it is coming probably just from streaming and YouTube. Of course, there's still radio going on in the background, but it's like digital radio and stuff like that too. So it's like I see the biggest parallel with books as well. So like I don't know if you've ever spoken to an author or know the numbers behind selling a book, but if you go in a traditional model with a publishing company, you make a tiny percentage of the dollar as well, right? Like it might even be 5 to 10% in royalty. And, like Trung, like your coworker, what's her name? Steph Smith, she'd sold like a book directly online to people who most people don't even know who she is, and she probably made as much as
$100,000. She made $6.
Exactly,
crazy.
Which is more than most authors make, honestly, because like obviously the big ones can make a lot of money, and this is assuming the objective is to make money. Of course, there's other reasons to write a book, but there's just that parallel that those two industries are still going through it. There isn't really a streaming direct way of doing it for books yet. Like, there's Kindle, there's self-published, but it's not at the scale where like the big ones are doing that. They're still working with those publishing houses from what I can see. And just one anecdote is I worked in a previous job. We launched what became a New York Times bestselling book, and you'll just knowing like how it works from the back end, and it's not like it's completely gamed, but you need to play the game. You need to hire the people who are going to.
Are you privy to talk about what some of those things are?
I mean, I can share some of the tactics because it's not like illegal. It's just like
hit us. What were the tactics?
I mean, so some of the tactics, there's all these rules around. But basically, New York Times bestsellers list, from what I understand, and I'm not an expert, is it's not based on who sells the most books. Like that's one part of the algorithm or the computation, right? The other part, like for example, Jordan Peterson, who you just said, his books on New York Times.
That's
he
right.
sold 1 million books. But like,
Yep.
and I know people have sold 30,000, 50,000 books, which is already quite a lot for books, and they make it on the bestsellers list. That's one part. The second thing is, at the time when we worked on it, or when I saw what was going on, they didn't count Amazon book sales the same way they counted like a book in store.
Right.
And you would basically work with an agency or like an outsourced consultant who would, you'd have like 6 months of pre-orders. We would get all my company partners were buying it for their employees and stuff like that. And that's all good. Like that's smart, right? But like that goes towards the pre-orders. And the way it works is those like outside consultants, they work on distributing it in a way that the maximum amount get counted towards the pre-selling book number or whatever. So again, it's not like wrong. It's just, if you're just an individual trying to figure this out, like you're not going to probably figure it out on your own. So you need to work with someone who knows what
was
they're doing.
the exact reason why Peterson didn't get on the list? It's definitely
they
technicality.
I don't know the real reason, and I don't know if they've ever said it, but I think it's just because he, as an individual, has been like controversial in air quotes.
Oh, right. I understand why they did it. I'm wondering what reason they used to
what that they
knock
said.
him up. Yeah.
I'm not sure. They just say we've got our own
probably some
editorial. Yeah, probably some bullshit. Exactly. So anyway, it just made me realize the punchline is like all these lists, I don't value them as much as I might have done like 5-10 years ago. It's like Forbes 30 under 30. It's like, all right, once you know how that works as well, it's like, okay, there's no point worrying about it.
Let me
Play
add
stupid games, win stupid prizes.
There we go.
exactly. Let me circle back quickly on the Jay-Z artist ownership thing. Somebody had a really great thread. I gotta figure out. I don't have the name here, but he was piecing together all the parts of the Twitter, Square, Tidal kind of triumvirate, right? And he's like, so a day before it was announced that Square was acquiring Tidal, the music streaming service that Jay-Z owned, Square actually launched a bank, right? A bank service. And basically he's piecing it all together. He's like, okay, this is what Jack Dorsey has put in place. Square has a bank. Square has a cash app, which is already heavily used by the hip hop community to interact with fans, right? To gift fans. It's really used for viral growth. And then Twitter has this super follow feature now where you can pay for extra content. And Jack Dorsey's trying to add all these creator-friendly tools, right? Like newsletters, spaces, anything to help lock in the value or create more value for creators on Twitter. Because obviously he's done dick and they've captured zero value, which we've talked about, Twitter. So how this all looks now is that if you're an artist and you get into this Square Twitter ecosystem, it's actually really smart. It's like, so you can promote your stuff on Twitter like crazy, right? And you can host the music on Tidal. And now to you guys' point is like, so label used to front a lot of money and then take whatever, 80, 90% of the upside. So Square has a bank now and it can do creator specific lending because it has all the analytics from Tidal about how well the music will do. So it will front you that money. And now you've turned the music industry into like essentially like a mortgage, right? It's like,
that's amazing,
right? It's like, you can quantify, maybe it's going to be riskier certainly than a mortgage in a lot of ways. But now instead of taking 80, 90 cents on the dollar, Square Bank can lend to artists and be like, listen, we will end up, whatever the interest being, you'll end up keeping 80 cents on the dollar, which is way better than the deals you'll have now. And you have all the tools you'll need within our ecosystem, right? And if you need any more reason to do it, Jay-Z's on the board of Square. So like, there you go.
Well, Trung, I didn't think of it like that. And the really cool thing there is I'm seeing some smart like technology people doing this. It's taking like these old scores essentially, like in what you described is a credit score, right? Like old school, you would have a credit score which is based on
doing it niche by niche.
Exactly. Whereas now, instead of like, say I'm an artist and I want to like raise money to fund a tour or whatever you're going to do. Previously, you go to a bank, they're going to say, who are you? What's your credit history? All that stuff. Instead, these guys can say, click this button. We're just going to analyze it on the spot, tell you how much we can afford to give you or not. And I've seen there's a company called Tala, Tala. I was supposed to have the founder on my podcast. And what they do is pretty cool. They do this for the developing world where you press a button, because most people there don't have bank accounts in, like, let's say Africa, but they have mobile phones, and they'll press a button, and within a minute it analyzes everything on your phone, and it will be like, how organized are, like, there's thousands of variables, but one of the ones they found is how you save people's names in your phone. And
Amazing.
It's like people who write their first name and last name, they ended up paying back their credit in a much better way,
actually,
whatever.
So M-Pesa in Kenya is kind of the leading one. You have a lot of listeners that haven't heard M-Pesa. It was like basically a mobile facilitated bank, right? And it's everything you said is because a lot of Africans don't have, or a lot of at the time Kenyans didn't have bank accounts. They're mediating credit analysis via the phone. It's like if you are paying your phone bill on time, it's highly likely that you'll pay a loan on time. That's it. Right?
Like they're seeing all your emails and everything, so they get more access.
I could do a quick screen share here, and you could just show it, but or we'll talk through it too for people that are listening. But Shopify is doing this, obviously, with
with lending.
They got
Shopify
store
Capital?
data. Yeah.
Oh, snap.
Oh, that's sick.
So you literally press this, and then in an hour's time, it's in your bank account, and you remit your sales until you've covered the balance, and you pay some filthy APR on it, obviously. But for people that work physical product and they need to buy inventory, and you're in a bind, maybe you just started a shop from nothing, and you figured something out on the internet. You don't qualify for capital in the traditional sense, but you have tapped into something that's working. All of these platforms, and that's super smart, Trung, what you're talking about. Dorsey doing this for culture. This is like people getting into the money lending business that have a different level of insight into the customer, right?
Well, I can speak. Clearbank specifically does this, right? They lend. It's not even. They don't even lend money. It's revenue share agreement. So I actually had the chance to interview the founders, and they talk through it specifically, right? It's like because I made a mistake. I go in there. How do you think about this as a lending versus equity? Debt is like, first of all, it's not lending, right? It's like it's a revenue share agreement. We're gonna give you. We understand e-commerce so well. We're willing to give your Jack Butcher's hat company $1 million because we know how well this hat product will sell, and we take 10% of each sale until we're paid back. They say they cap themselves at 7% of the sale, but that's actually being disputed. But they took that exact model. So Clearbank, actually they rebranded to Clear. They don't want to be known just as a bank. They also do it for SaaS businesses, right? Because SaaS has the same model. We can go, you can go so deep into this. It's a whole new asset class.
Like Pipe as well, right? Pipe.
Yeah.
So what you're doing is you're taking the atomic unit of the business, which is the revenue contract. And Alex Danko, who works at Shopify Capital, has written extensively on this. But basically, the unlock is all the information's there. Traditional banks are just not smart or quick enough to do this, right? They're moving towards that, but there's just too much bureaucracy for them to kind of justify launching these new products right away. But they're
asking people to figure out the population of Canada, right?
Yeah. Dude, they're hiring interns and asking them to Google the population of Canada and then not accepting the Onion as a source. This is antiquated. So it's very smart. So the main thought I want to say is like, what is the atomic unit of these kind of internet businesses, right? For SaaS, it's this individual contract. It's this contract that you can say with pretty high confidence that you believe this customer will be with you for 3 years. So this contract is the atomic unit that we are going to sell off to other investors. And obviously we can promise them, because this all goes back to the low interest rate environment. If your bank account is returning 0.03% or whatever it is now, you're going to buy anything to give you a return, right? You'll get any kind of product. Man, this could be its own beast, right? So
this is great.
These are the future banks, man. Like you said, Square, like the reason, I mean, again, not investment advice, but the reason I bought Square stock myself is because I'm like, okay, these guys are nimble enough and they're creating the tools, they're technologically savvy enough to modernize this antiquated industry the same way Stripe is doing in their own way, but they're not public yet. So there's just so many, like there's so much opportunity in this space because it's kind of boring to most people because it's like old processes, but it's literally trillions of dollars going through the system, and even a small tweak making it slightly smarter makes a huge difference. So
How much of an advantage is it to be plugged into Twitter? Just ridiculous, man. I don't know what the legality of that is. Like, I don't know how much data they can share. I'm assuming.
You mean Square? Are you talking about Square?
Yeah. Like, you have basically a freaking hive mind that you can tap into and analyze. It's like data that's coming out of people's heads in real time. And you can track every trend under the sun.
They're going to merge, right? Like, something is happening where, and then the part I love about all this is, what is the only thing that's in Jack Dorsey's bio? Bitcoin, the word Bitcoin, right? So all this.
There is no second.
Something's happening, bro. Square, Twitter, the dude looks like a freaking shaman. Tickers. Bitcoin, it's all coming together. It's all coming together.
It all comes back to Bitcoin.
I was just going to say one thing. I wrote this thing the other day. The year is 2030. There's only two professions left, Amazon and artist. And this is the same idea, right? It's like, that obviously that's an exaggeration, shitpost, but the idea that there are these just mega monopolies, and then there are people that plug into those monopolies to make a living. That's like, the middle is just going to get completely like destroyed. No,
100%, man. Places that have interns look up populations of countries. Done.
What a waste of human capital, man. I hate to say describe like that, but like, what a waste of time.
I don't want to hammer home the point, but so this email comes to me, right? And I'm just sitting there and I'm like, you literally could have Googled this. Bro,
it's the most infuriating thing.
It's a power play. I'm like, you're trying to flex on me by asking me to look up a useless piece of information that you could have done yourself. God, I was so mad.
It's the equivalent of the Google bin that we talked about. It's like you got these Stanford grads pressing approve, disapprove on porn ads or whatever. And it's like, come on, guys. Like, at the same time, I will say, that's just to wrap a bow on it. There is also like the 21-year-old that we've all been who thinks they know more than they do. And you kind of need to like bring them down to earth sometimes too, without like demoralizing them. So like there's a way, like maybe not bringing them like go get me coffee style, but like you need to understand the ins and outs of stuff at a level and realize like there's a lot to learn. But Googling something is clearly just like taking a piss.
What a flex, bro. What a flex.
All right, boys, let's move on. But yeah, that was really interesting discussion. Jack, when you're able to share your actual ideas when it launches or whatever that might be, let us know. We can share that again.
That'd be good.
All right, cool. We got a little bit of time left, so let's chat about Trung. You've been writing about this, or you're going to write about this, the longest running ad campaign ever for any brand. Do you want to jump straight into that, or should we talk about the best ad campaigns? Like, why don't you start with that, and maybe we can see
this one I can actually share my screen on too.
Go for it.
And the last one when I messed up. But actually, the reason why I wanted to bring this up is because Jack here is the real expert on advertising. And I just want to go through the history of Absolut Vodka quickly. And I want Jack and obviously Bilal to opine. You're in advertising now. So Absolut Vodka is a Swedish vodka brand. It was founded in 1879. It did not enter the US market until 1979, complete unknown. And it went to TWA, a very large advertising agency. And they're like, hey, listen, we need you to make a campaign for us, right? Like, here is our product. This is the product, right? It's just nothing. It's just not very, it's vodka. I mean, at the end of the day, all alcohol is kind of the same. It's all about the branding, right? So TWA actually comes up with a brilliant strategy. So typically, when it comes to alcohol, at that time, I know this has changed. It's like, you kind of want to talk about the taste, right? How crisp it is, how clean it is, how there's no hangover. But TWA goes, you know what? We don't want to compete on that level because it's already such a saturated market. We're just going to do something completely different, rise above the crowd. And they're like, we're going to do our entire campaign around aesthetics and aesthetics of the bottle. And imagine being like, absolutely, you're like, okay, man, like, you're just talk about the bottle and not about the vodka. They're like, yeah, we like the bottle. So the bottle here is what you see. This is the first Absolut vodka bottle in the United States. It came out in 1979. And it's actually based on the old if you look at it, the size of it, or look at it, imagine it shrunk a bit. It looks like a pharmaceutical vial, right? So it's actually what it looks like. It used to be a Swedish pharmaceutical vial. So you can see the blueprint here. But frick, man, the ad campaign is so fucking smart. And it ended up running for 25 years. This was the first ad they ran, Absolute Perfection. And it's very simple. It's just the bottle. So they're basing this ad and they're differentiating themselves purely around the aesthetics of the bottle, what it looks like, right? They don't even talk about the vodka.
Can we explain for people who aren't watching? Could you just describe what's on the screen?
So this is the first ad for Absolut Vodka. If you're not familiar with Absolut Vodka, it's just like any other vodka. It's clear and it looks like water. But the bottle here, it just says Absolut Vodka on the bottle. It's clear otherwise with some text, and the ad says Absolute Perfection. So remember those two elements: a picture of the bottle. Done in a very nice, clean way. And then the name of the brand, Absolut, done in a pun. So there's two words, Absolute Perfection. So over the next 25 years, again, this is the longest running ad campaign ever. They did 2,000 versions of this ad. And by the end of it, when this product entered the US market, it had less than 3% of market share. But by the end of the campaign, 2006, I believe it had 50% of imported vodka share in America. So one ad, 25 years.
You say 5-0?
5-0.
Oh, damn.
I don't know what it is now because the ad campaign ended in 2006. And obviously liquor has become so competitive. It's always been competitive. But I just wanted to go through some of my favorite ads here that they had. Just genius. Actually, the one that blew it up is you guys will laugh, but I think Jack will appreciate this. So, well, both of you will. The ad that blew it up was Andy Warhol. So they positioned it as, let's just talk about the aesthetics of the bottle. And Andy Warhol is like, wow, this is a really smart idea. And the bottle is actually kind of nice. So Andy Warhol goes, can I make a version of this bottle? And he painted it. So here's the painting of Andy Warhol's version of Absolut Vodka. He did this in 1985. So this is 4 years after that original ad campaign that I mentioned. But this is when it really took off because Warhol turned this simple idea into art now, right? And after he did
Sound familiar?
Yeah, exactly. So here we go. Here are some amazing versions of this ad. The ones that really took off is they just did this shape for local geographies, right? So they did Absolute LA and the bottle is the shape of a swimming pool. And then they did this is a great one. Absolute Chicago. The bottle is blowing away because Chicago is a windy city. This one's amazing though. They had Absolute. Oh, this one's genius. Absolute New Orleans, the jazz festival, right?
That's really cool.
Really smart. Check out Absolute Paris in the shape of the metro. And then here's an amazing one. This one was really good. Absolute Texas. And you guys will love this. Check out what the bottle looks like. Everything's bigger in Texas.
That's
so it's
brilliant.
It's the Absolute bottle, but blown up. The last thing I'll add before I throw it to you guys is, to me, like nothing is really culturally relevant until it gets parodied. You know, if SNL makes fun of it, it matters, right? Or if somebody really like a viral joke comes about it, it really matters. This ad is hilarious. Somebody did Absolute Impotence.
That's brilliant.
And the bottle is just shriveled up. Basically, that's what happens when you drink alcohol anyways.
The most accurate version so far.
Yeah, I'm going to throw it to you guys. Summarize. Absolut went from less than 3% market share to 50% market share using basically one ad campaign, only print, and it was only about the bottle, not about taste. They didn't bring celebs into it. They didn't bring models. It was just like, it was just the bottle. So let me throw it to you guys. Let's throw it to Jack first because this is where his area of expertise. Jack, I want you to opine on their strategy here.
All right. So, a couple of things. The first one, I'm going to Constraint. Their ability to use Constraint is incredible, right? We talked about this a lot. The idea that you construct something that can build equity and people that stick at something long enough to build equity versus, hey, we've got this campaign out in the market for 3 months and then we're going to hire a new agency. We're going to start over again. There's this intangible equity that exists in everybody who's ever seen that ad's head that you throw away every time you hit the drawing board. And that's, I think I have a friend, he said, great advertising wears in, not out. And a lot of people just don't stick with something long enough to start to realize the compounding benefit.
It doesn't wear. I see. So the long, it's the Lindy effect, right? The longer it's there, the more value it'll accrue. Okay.
And that, like, the construct that they have is like, they're basically, it's so simple, but it's like, it has this, like, I was thinking about this the other day, the idea of like a barnacle that can ride on a whale. So you have this really simple thing, Absolut, and then you can attach yourself to basically any aspect of culture, be that like a place, an event, a movement, an artist. Absolut is iconic enough that it will stand on its own, but it's also broad enough that you can, it's a prefix that makes sense pretty much to anything. And it has let
me, to your exact point, let me show you one that nails your point exactly. Check out this. So yoga takes off early 2000s. Look what Absolut does. Just flips its model upside down. Barnacle, it's instantly recognizable.
Yeah.
Absolut yoga. Genius, right?
Brilliant.
It's incredible. I think the simplicity of it and people's inability to stick with simplicity, because it kind of, you walk into a room and you present something like that, you can't talk about it for an hour. You either get it or you don't, right? And it's like this moment where you don't need 50 slides to go in and say why we're doing this. It's like, you just show the creative, let the work speak for itself. And I think the speed of culture now, people expect a degree of, you expect it to blow up on the first try, for example, right? And something I've learned personally with even the, like, on a tiny scale, visualize value, black and white graphics, you put it out for so long and it's like, yeah, this is kind of working, but then months and years into it, the amount of equity that just exists intangibly, it's like you could see a shadow of that bottle at this point, and you'd know that that's the brand it represents, right?
And Jack, with your stuff, it's like I've seen people crop your image and basically use it as their own, maybe not by purpose sometimes, I don't know. But there'll be literally people in the comments being like, this is visualized value, or this looks like visualized value.
Right.
This is that style. And it's, like you said, it's the repetition of, by now, literally millions and millions, tens of millions of impressions, maybe more. I don't know the numbers. But
dude, the one that you have where where you are versus the potential, like somebody had that.
Pointless?
Tattoo, right?
Is that one?
This is pointless. Is that your most popular one?
I think so. Yeah. It's just like this is what we talked about before. It's like they're memes. Like great advertising is a meme, and you talked about Trung in the last, what was it? The atomic unit of value in a business.
Yeah.
This is like the atomic unit of culture. That's what a meme is, right? It's like, how do you really distill this? You go into all these like niches of culture, and that yoga one is a great example. Texas is a great example. Just trying to think of another brand that's done it that well.
I was thinking like you know better, but like MasterCard Priceless, was that them?
Yeah,
because
forever they would say priceless.
That is MasterCard priceless, because that can be anything, right? And that's been parodied a million times.
Yeah, completely. And it's just, it always works, but by this point it's probably worn out and they've probably changed. But then the other one that comes to mind, I forgot which beer brand in the UK, maybe Carlsberg. Was it Carlsberg who they would always set it up with like, you might remember better than I do, because
isn't it the best Carlsberg don't make X, but if they did, they'd be the best X in the world.
Exactly.
Really
and that whole concept, they can go wild with it. They can just do like the best like horse show, and it's like completely random. Like most alcohol brands ads are like, what the hell's going on? But it's a mini little story. It's catching your attention, and then you're like, oh yeah, of course, that ongoing joke or ongoing meme, essentially message, comes straight through again.
I've got to give credit to my first boss, probably, for planting this idea in my head. He wrote the world's local bank. You know that HSBC ad?
Oh, he did that.
Damn, he did that.
He wrote that.
That's so famous, dude.
And art directed it. So I was in airports for 20 years or something. And
we talked about
another example. Yeah, they could.
Did he ask you when you worked for him? Did he ask you to ever look up the population of random countries?
No. Maybe that's why I escaped that. But the idea that construct can layer over anything, it's just sick idea, man. The world's local bank. You could just do it. You could put it over anything and you capture like the affinity that somebody has for this thing and associate yourself with it. Just incredible.
Well, that Absolut, right? That the geography is like they could literally do any locale and then get the cachet of that locale. I wanted to add a point from what you just said is because of how fast everything's moving, it's just so valuable to have the brand, right? And but to your point is like you're actually fighting against the human intuition of always wanting novelty. So the ability to stick to, like, for example, I'm sure you've heard too, is like, have people told you, man, I like visualize value, great, first 100 times I saw, but now I think it's getting old. But it's like, it's actually not getting old, right? It's like, it's harder for you to stick with it actually than to try something new, right? Like you're probably constantly wanting to try something new, but like, you know what? There's just so much brand equity here. It's like, why throw it away? You're fighting that.
Yeah, like, can you imagine Nike changing their tagline? It would be the most moronic thing ever.
100%. Oh,
that's
my God.
Amazing. That's the beauty of it. Like they have something that's timeless, but then every little story is like can fit around that one ongoing like message essentially.
The like the word for it in an advertising war room would be the big idea. So it's like this thing that is specific enough to represent the brand, but you can also throw so much stuff at it that it captures the intrigue and interest of so many different people without like diluting the strength of the message. And like, you sit in a room for 4 weeks to come up with one sentence or like one device that does, that performs that function. And what happens is it's basically entropy, right? And ego that comes in where it's like, say a creative team ages out, it's like no one wants to come in and work on something that somebody else came up with, right? Everyone's like chest beating, like I can come up with a better idea than this. And that was one of the most frustrating things about working in advertising is people working to impress other advertisers with new ideas at like, festivals that people, it's the Forbes thing, right? Advertisers giving other advertisers an award has nothing to do with the impact that the ad had on the business because you haven't even waited long enough to figure out if it works. That's right? It's like somebody launched this ad. It's like, oh, it's cool. It's cinematic. It's funny. It's great. We'll give it an award. But what long-term impact did it have on the business? You haven't even waited long enough to measure that.
Well, that's what I love about the Absolut ad, right? It's like the beauty of it is, hey, you don't have to be like, hey, did this work? It's like, no, we know it worked because they did it for 25 years, right? If it didn't work, they wouldn't have done it for 25 years. Whereas the ones you're talking about, they're giving these awards for something that's been out for 3-4 months. It's like, how can you possibly know after 3 months that this has quote unquote worked?
Yeah, I finished a blog post just before we got on this call I just flicked open, my father-in-law's in town. I was reading Ogilvy on advertising with him yesterday. Amazing. And there's this one page ad that was written for how to win friends and influence people. One page. It sold 3 million copies of that book. A one-page ad. And you think about like, they just nailed the story on the first one. There's loads of revisions that went into it, but it was the perfect depiction of that thing. If they'd have written a new ad every week, it would just be like the stupidest thing in the world to abandon that. And the reason people do it is, disconnect between, why you're performing this function. It's like, are you a designer or an art director that wants to put new work in your portfolio? Or are you a partner to a business that has an objective and you've figured out how to, basically you need to figure out where else to put this ad. That's your job at that point, not how to reinvent the ad.
I think my big takeaway from this is actually just listening to you talk about it is, man, it's just so hard to just keep doing what is working, right? It's actually harder in a lot of ways than doing something new, which just speaks to, that's the positive though, because if it's the harder thing, that probably is the path that you should be going, right? It's fucking hard, man, just to not want to do new stuff all the time.
Yes, and you convince yourself sometimes where it's like, oh, I need to, out innovate myself, or it's like you're talking nonsense. Like this works, just keep doing it, man. It's go back to one of our first episode, the Alex Cohen thing. It's like you found this thing that works, why are you pivoting? There's 4 billion people on the internet. Even a 0.0001% of that group is enough to, sustain your family for generations if you
We're talking
figure
about
out.
if one person buys it, a market?
Yeah.
Okay, can you talk to that idea just super quickly, just for the listeners who didn't hear it?
So we were talking about merch early on episode 3 or 4 with guest Alex Cohen. And he had this little heuristic where he said, if you can sell one of something, you could sell $1 million of it. If you're a business that has access to the internet, which I think is a fairly, I tend to agree with that, but it is this idea of working on the wrong thing versus like articulating the story that sells it and then being really creative about where you place that story and how you bring new people into the ecosystem. It's a pretty difficult mental model to just keep hammering away at doing the same thing if you have a relative, like a little bit of success with it. Like, Trung, if you basically change your Twitter strategy tomorrow, it would be the dumbest thing in the world, right? Like,
yeah, if it's working already.
You go think boy, you just completely reverse it. It's like, what's this?
No shit post.
Yeah, no more shit post.
What I will add though, and I agree with both of what you guys just said. The only thing is there comes to a certain point where you hit a certain scale where there's a reinvention that happens. That doesn't mean abandoning what's working though. I think there's a difference. And to a lot, like, I think music's, again, quite a good example. Like Kanye West literally made a whole skit called I Miss the Old Kanye. Yeah. And the reason is anyone who loves Kanye West loves College Dropout. You hear it come on and you're like, all falls down. This is the best thing ever. And now he's mumbling about like poop diddy scoop. You know what I mean? So you're like, what happened to the old Kanye? He's gone crazy or whatever. Right. And so it's obviously not the same as selling 1,000 or 1 million hats or $1 million worth of hats. But I think there's that kind of like tension between like the person creating, essentially, and it depends on what they want out of it. So if your objective is to keep growing Trunk's Twitter, then to keep doing what you're doing. Sure. But if Trung was like, actually, I write on Twitter because it's a creative expression for me, and I like to shitpost and I like to do this, and now 10 years later, exactly, like then maybe that changes. But in terms of like, if the objective is to keep growing, keep selling stuff, yeah, it definitely makes sense. But I think the creative side, like there's something intangible there that you can't always kind of measure in the same way.
That's a great point. I think like that's why the Absolut campaign had to end at a certain point, because it's burned through so many creative teams to the point where they're like, we don't want to work on this anymore, right? This has been done. Like, let's reinvent the thing. And like at a certain point, you run out of creative energy to keep doing the same thing.
Actually, I was looking up why they ended it. I'm like, man, why would you stop something so bad? But I think you just gave the answer. It's like, I think the people working on it is like, I don't want to. It might not even have been the right answer. Yeah, it's like it goes back to the human psychology, the need for novelty, right? It might have even been the wrong move for them to do, but it's just like people are like, we're done. Well, nobody wants to do it anymore.
I was just going to say it changes hands too, right? The people who came up with that ad aren't running Absolut. The people that bought the ad at Absolut aren't there anymore. The people that worked at the agency that came up with the ad aren't there anymore. Would have changed hands multiple times. For it to have even survived 25 years is pretty remarkable.
Yeah.
Last thing I was going to say on that is that it definitely makes sense from the ad side and messaging and the kind of like the creative part. But again, if you think of it from another angle as like technologists creating stuff, of course, like if it was just always like do the thing that's already working, then every company would have been bankrupted already. Like IBM is no longer the IBM it used to be. And, Apple, Google, all the fam companies, whatever, they had to keep finding new areas that worked. And that's like a different angle to look at it from. I don't know. You could argue though that maybe they got in a habit of learning what works, which is in simple terms, creating stuff that people want, which is obviously like oversimplification. But like, and then they did that in a new area, like, oh, mobile's taken off. Now we're going to create Android. We're going to create an iPhone, etc. But I don't know. I think the timelessness of advertising is quite a specific lens.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah,
this is not a generalized lesson. Yeah,
and physical product as well. Like Absolut Vodka, it's like until people stop drinking alcohol becomes this, unfashionable thing to consume. Why pivot? But yeah, if you're a technology company and there's like a trillion other people like trying to build what you're building or compete for your market share, or like Porsche, people that have these like iconic products that have iconic campaigns to support them. Like some businesses actually suffer from like innovating, and others like can't live without it. It's it's a pretty interesting.
No, I think the takeaway is let's not. I think I was generalizing way too much. Industry specific. So this makes sense. They shouldn't have stopped it. I don't know if they got any better. I don't remember anything from Absolut since. But yeah, I thought that was interesting. Wanted Jack's lens on it.
One other thing is like the mediums in which that would have been displayed. So when did they discontinue it? You say, Trung?
2006. Oh, right. It was print only. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Print only thing. It was
so print is just like not a thing anymore. And print is like the golden age of advertising for anybody that's like, a student of advertising. You look at like, I got some over there. There's old like Porsche ads on the floor and like VW ads. It's a different art form. Amazing.
Well, I think you just answered it. I think people got tired and print was kind of going the way the do. And this is a pure print ad campaign. Beautiful.
I just want to say real quick that hearing, thanks for the summary, Trung, and Jack, hearing you talk about advertising is pretty cool. We should do it more often. It's amazing,
man. We should do that. We could make this a thing where we just pull up amazing campaigns.
Yeah. Well, my favorite thing is when you speak to Jack in normal, like, texting or what in group chats or whatever, or even just speaking, he'll bring up font all the time. Like he'll be like, oh yeah, that's sans serif, like whatever, like wingdings. And I'm like, he just like, that's how he sees the world in some ways. And I'm just sitting there like, oh yeah, I can kind of see what it's, when he says it, I'm like, oh yeah, impact 32, bold, you know what I mean? But like the way he's just seeing it on a screen, like it's Figma or something, and he's selecting it. But yeah, it's pretty cool.
We should make some print ads for not investment advice.
Yeah. Oh, that would be actually really.
Oh my God, that'd be
fun
amazing
to do. Like some old school ones,
vintage ones. Yeah.
I mean, our kind of cover art is basically that, but that was a really good chat, boys. I mean, I think we've got time probably for one last quick section. How you doing, Trung?
Actually, if you want to go into the reader Q&A, unless you wanted to really.
The main one was really, so we got two main things there. Let's see how much we get. So this has been asked several times since, and Jack, I don't know if you can share your screen, but people have asked about merch update for NIA. I don't know if we'll have anything we can share, or at least a status update.
Well, a status update is maybe we'll run some Twitter polls on what we should make. I'll get some visuals together. My organization is not the best here, so
that's right.
I'll be showing a few of the wrong things on the way there, but we'll run a few polls and we'll see. We'll see what people want, and I'll whack it in the comments too. Hats, shirts. What else we got? Visors. Denim visors.
Yo, dude.
Denim visors.
Yo, can we pull up a quick image of the denim visor?
Man, let me see if I've got it.
Yeah, take your time.
I'm gonna have to put together a couple of slides for next time, and then we'll vote on them in the comments.
All right, perfect.
All right, beautiful.
All right, cool. Next one we got is from Joe Wolfcastle. He said, love to hear your top 3 news sources. This is ready for Jack Red Pill. And that means not BBC, not CNBC, but places you go to find edge of the internet shiz.
Bro, we might have to bleep these out if we don't want to get demonetized.
Yeah, and actually one last thing to add, he said, could be specific people on Twitter, individual threads. And it doesn't have to be 3, like whatever comes to mind.
I want Jack to open, because Jack's got some stuff going on.
Jack's got some crazy feed.
We do it every week. We say it, man. Balaji, follow Balaji. He's 5 years ahead. And then I have not typed in a news website into my browser for years at this point. Like I told you, boys, I used to be a zero hedge nut. Like in 2019, I'm reading the comment section in zero hedge, and it's like, that's just not a healthy habit to develop. I put
what is zero hedge for people who don't know what it is?
So basically, I don't think there's any original publishing on there, but it's like an aggregator of basically doomsday narrative news. So the tagline for Zero Hedge is, on a long enough timeline, the survival rate for everything is 0.
Wait, is that why you also say recovering pessimist?
Yeah, exactly.
You're a recovering
exactly.
pessimist.
So I had to get rid of that. Out of my. So I'll just read you a few. I'll just read you a few headlines that are on Zero Hedge today. Oh, maybe it's actually not that crazy, but the comments are where it goes down. FBI ridicule for seizing man's Lego set of U.S. Capitol. Grocery stores are masking price hikes via shrinkflation.
Shrinkflation. What?
Americans see the raging housing mania. Bad time to buy and good time to sell. Sentiment spiked to WTF record. 2 more Chinese firms pull US IPO plans amid fallout from DD disaster. Maybe you can do that one next week, Trung. The DD.
Yeah, we could talk about that. Yeah, let's do that one. I just want to summarize. So I don't want to lose the thread here. We need to get Jack back on it. Zero Hedge, Balaji. Just keep firing them off, buddy. What else? What else?
And then the rest is Twitter, I think. So all of the edge of the internet stuff and the how you find a NFT project or I think you got to be a little bit careful as well, because you can really start to curate your own rabbit hole, right? Like when I got into the NFT stuff, my feed when I was first selling NFTs, my feed had pretty much zero NFT content in it. And it was just like this foray into this new world. And then I realized, oh man, there's this whole community and there's people that have been doing this for 4 or 5 years. Let me jump in and follow some of the top people in that world. And then you just build another little echo chamber. And now I feel like my feed has tilted from, before it was probably more like creator economy and inverted commas and technology and investing. And then I went crypto heavy, and it's probably 60-40 that way now. And then that just like manifests itself in your behavior almost instantly, in the same way that if you read CNN every day, you have a certain political outlook because you're just fire hosing stories that have a specific lens. And it's really difficult I think it's incredibly difficult to curate a balanced feed, right? Especially something like Twitter, where it's like everybody is trying to maximize engagement. That's why I think Balaji is a good follow, because to me, he feels pretty objective and maybe not even objective. He's obviously opinionated, but you can kind of follow the line of reasoning or the logic, and there's sources cited, and there's years of content going back.
He's got like an academic background as well as like a technologist operator background. So I think that's a good mix, where a lot of academic people can be way just in the weeds, overcomplicating. But the plus side to that world is you're supposed to at least have a method to the madness, and you check the references, you read the journals, all that stuff. So I think he's got like that big mega brain ability to do both, which is quite rare.
Did you have a specific NFT follows, Jack, or is it just more like?
I have to have a list. Like a lot of the there's this one guy who has, I think it's Punk 4156, and that's the crypto punk that he owns. It's a gorilla with a bandana on it.
Amazing.
And I assume it's a he, based on the language he's using DMs back and forth for me. But just really like smart takes on the space and the future of NFTs and people that have been in it for years and years. Who else is doing great things in that? I think I'd have to come back with a
Roham, Roham, the CEO of NBA Dapper Labs, which is NBA Top Shot's probably a good follow too, because he is recognized as one of the quote unquote leaders or recognizable figures in this movement. So he's often retweeting, like people. I've actually followed a lot of his retweets as a way, to Jack's point, of trying to catch on to kind of edge of internet stuff. So I think that could be a potential recommendation. I think he's at Roham G. I think that's his handle. Jack's, I'm not super edge of the internet-y.
Yeah, I think maybe Twitter lists. I need to get maybe more into that. Like if we should do lists for not investment advice, maybe like just do a couple. Oh yeah,
that's a great call. And
have people follow them, and anything we mention, maybe we bang onto those lists.
That's a great call. I like that.
Yeah, I'm looking at some of the lists. I'm trying to see who Roham at Roham G has. I don't know if this is what you just said, but a list called Crypto Artists.
Oh,
which is really,
Smart.
he's already curated that. I'm
really
thinking that's
underuse
probably,
that.
I have a few personal ones that I have, but they're like kind of old. I should use lists more. I have the same thing with Jack where now my feed is annoyingly, to be honest, because it's too much. I need to like reel it back in. It's like I don't see anyone's pictures anymore. It's only like Bored Apes and like it's a bunch of NFTs, which is fun. But I also just want like a blend of like some news, some
humans.
insights.
You just want humans. One real people.
Like real humans as well. But like I want a mix. So I think I'm gonna have to do a reorganization soon and like not unfollow that many people because I don't actually follow that many people as it is, but just like maybe put them into lists and stuff like that, because otherwise it just gets people is kind of crazy.
Following people on Twitter is kind of a crazy commitment. The more I think about it, it's like it's a mad thing. Like I'm allowing somebody to just throw out some nonsense and plant it in my skull forever. You know what I mean? It's just a crazy thought, and we've been doing it forever. You know, reading a newspaper or whatever is the same idea, or reading a book, but just the volume of crap.
Oh my goodness, it's just. Well, here, we're talking about Balaji. He was just on the Invest Like the Best podcast, and he's been talking about it a bit more. It's just like the information diet, right? He's like, the last point I'll leave on this is, he's like, you can measure now with Whoop or Apple Watch, like, you know, your glucose levels. You can't do that with Apple Watch, but there's items now where you can measure when you eat.
Yeah, Levels does glucose.
Yeah, Levels does that. You see how your glucose spikes. And he's like, we're not that far away from measuring how our stress level spikes, or cortisol is like a stress chemical, by what we read and what we see, right? So you can put something on your arm, test yourself over a day of what you're consuming, and then every time you stress or spike, because the whole point of a lot of media, you know, if it bleeds, it leads, they're trying to engage you by frankly triggering you. It's like, okay, every time I open the Times, I get triggered. I'm going to stop following the Times. It's just like for your own health, right? And I mean, it's such a great idea and concept about your media diet is almost going to be the exact same as how it's perceived about how you ingest food, right? It's like how much protein, like my diet should be 60% protein, 20% carbs, 20% fat, right? Like you should have the exact same approach mentally to, like, Zero Hedge should be 1% of your media diet.
It should be 0%, man. Zero Hedge is the smoking of media diets.
Yeah, totally, bro.
Wait, Trung, what about you though? Because you're playing it down, but we talked a little bit about Reddit in the past, which people can go back to. But you find the craziest stuff too. So like you're reading a crazy amount. You're writing about it every day too.
I'll actually tell you like how a lot of it happens is, so just my daily, so I write for the Hustle Business Tech newsletter, daily newsletter. So my daily diet is like, I'll wake up, I'm subscribed to like 10 newsletters, but then I'll read Bloomberg, Wall Street Journal, Financial Times, New York Times. Like a lot of people do it, right?
But like, what about the newsletters? Which newsletters do you like?
Bern Hobart is my favorite. He's the diff. He's really, really good writer on technology and finance. Just the volume and the analysis level is insane. He's paid a Substack, the diff .substack. Matt Levine at Bloomberg does money stuff. I think a lot of people know him, but he's free and he just does super long form writing about finance. But he's a I think Harvard lit major. He used to be a professor, so he's like really writes it in a humorous and he has a lot of style. So he's very well liked in the community. And then Casey Noon, a former Verge reporter, he's great on tech. But yeah, so like tons of tech newsletters and then all the main publications. But what sends me down the rabbit holes is, especially I find Wall Street Journal and The Economist have the best anecdotes. Like they'll tell you a news story that's happening now that you should know about, but then tie it back to something from like The Economist is by far the best. If you ever read The Economist, you'll probably see and note how they open and close articles with a cultural reference or historical reference. And that's what sent me down rabbit holes. So they'll talk about big tech and then mention some cultural thing that happened. And I'll go look at that cultural thing, right? So I think that is the answer to what my media diet is. And I just get set down a lot of rabbit holes. It's actually not a lot of starting on Twitter and Reddit. It's starting with these other things, Googling.
By the way, Economist has one of the greatest ad campaigns ever too. They're incredible. Have you seen the ads for The Economist?
The one where, which campaign are you referring to? I have seen them.
I mean, they've just had this incredible
Evergreen
Constraint
one.
on their ads for so long. The red and white boards, it's just a headline.
Oh,
You seen these before?
Can you show it?
Do you want to share your screen if you
I'll
see
share
one?
my screen. I'll read a few of them, but they've just been killing the ad game for a long time. So check this out. This is a pull quote. It says, "I never read The Economist. Management trainee, age 42."
Oh my God. Oh,
Yeah. Lose the ability to slip out of meetings unnoticed. It's really clever advertising. Not all mind-expanding substances are illegal.
What's this pissed off one? Go up.
Well, yeah, what's the pissed off one? That was caught my eye.
There's so many. The Economist pissed me off. Blogger and communication expert, age 37. This has been parodied so many times that I can't even tell which ones are the official ads and which ones aren't. This is a great one. You won't maybe not get this one, Trung. You'll get it, Bilal. Somebody mentions Jordan. You think of a Middle Eastern country with a 3.3% growth rate. So Jordan was the name of a glamour model in the UK. And, that she just went by this one, just Jordan. I would Google it, but maybe
Katie
inappropriate.
Price, right?
Katie Price,
Oh my God. But when you see it, because you're so educated by The Economist, you think about the Middle Eastern country. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Oh, dude.
It's really strong.
I think we have to do a ad campaign of the week for each podcast.
Yeah. Seriously, there's so many.
The subscription list most wanted by assassins.
That's gotta be a parody, right?
Maybe. I honestly, it's hard to tell. But I used to work at Bloomberg, and this was like one of our go-to
North Star.
inspiration. Yeah, just class.
The only thing I was going to say is, I'll just second what you said. I've spent a lot of time on Twitter and all that, but the best stuff is basically newsletters by this point for me as well. Because especially, honestly, the crypto stuff, I'd say my diet is...
I'll pump.
There's the newsletters. I listen to a lot as well, though, So, I can take in a lot more through audio than reading. And I just get more time to do that. So... YouTube, I spend a lot of time going down rabbit holes there too. I would need to look at some of them. None of them are really. I'd say for crypto stuff though is obviously Pump. We know the one. I love Pump. He's great. It's very Bitcoin heavy, obviously, and you kind of know the angle. But he does a great job every day. That's great. And then there's the Bankless guys do a pretty good job of all the other stuff within the ecosystem. A lot of it's more Ethereum related. There's a guy called Anthony something. I can look him up, who does a daily thing on Ethereum too. Sassano, yeah. He does, again, he's kind of obviously biased as well. There's some chart people I follow, I forgot what they're called, but they do technical, not investment advice charts. And then there's obviously I have to say Polina's, who's Polina's got the profile. She does a really clean job of just summarizing and really digestible stuff. So I read her stuff. I also love Drew Riley's trends.vc.
Yeah, Drew, he is a machine.
He's a legend.
Incredible.
Yeah. And he's done stuff with both of us. He's been on my podcast. He's done stuff with Visualize Value too, right? And he's just a great thinker, man. He's just so smart. He can just take in so much and simplify it. And he does. There's a free version and there's a paid version of that. I do subscribe still the trends.co as well, which is the Hustle's newsletter, which is still pretty good. There's plenty of newsletters. I'm sure a lot of people listening have heard of some of these, but the podcast side is where I normally find rabbit hole stuff, or YouTube. You just kind of end up down rabbit holes. But it's normally on YouTube, it's a specific query. I'm trying to figure something out. And then I find sources through that. So that's kind of me as well. And The Economist, I'll back that as well, man. The Economist is one of the few traditional media companies that I've just always, I've read it since I was 16, had it delivered. You read it on a Sunday. It's always really high.
There's a couple of things about The Economist which are actually brilliant, right? They don't do bylines. You don't know who the author of an article is. It's because they want one, they're you're working for The Economist, right? This is the brand.
Yeah. Wow, so unusual.
That actually, that it's cracking a bit because they know what they understand now what's happening with individual journalists. I think they started allowing on the digital platform people's names, because it's if you're the best of the best now, you're you know what? I want some equity for myself, so I want my name there. But the other thing I want to say about The Economist, which makes it so genius, is it actually is one of the best ways to save time if you care about the world. It's just like you can trust them to digest all this information and present to you in a 3.5 to 4 hour read. It's a big read every week, but there's a time when all I read was The Economist cover to cover, and I didn't really read anything else because I'm like, you know what, I don't want to be in the daily news cycle. I'm just going to trust them to do it. Obviously, you don't want to hand over the complete, like Jack says, the read function to somebody, or the write function to somebody else to your brain, but they're pretty good. They've gone, they haven't been as quote unquote woke as a lot of these other media publications have. But the other thing I like about them is, they keep it the compression. But the other thing about them is a lot of game theory. You know that every other major business operator and executive is reading them. So you need kind of to read them just to have that
same base layer.
Yeah, the base layer understanding and the common language. So the fact that they could do that, like they became that in a lot of ways, is just for them is what a moat that is for a business, right? It's like if you want to just the table stakes as a Fortune 500 executive is that it's expected that you read the Economist, right?
That's great.
That's all I got,
man. Nice one, boys. Yeah,
Sounds
I feel
like
we
you're
can wrap
reading an
up.
ad read, mate.
Exactly. Not sponsored by The Economist.
Well, hit us up. That'd be a great sponsorship for No Investment Advice.
Yeah, exactly. Right?
Yeah. I did a partnership with them in my old job, actually. They might be, if we pump it on LinkedIn a bit, they might be still seeing some of these. So, all right, boys, this was fun. Come on, England is just to wrap up. We got the final. Don't make it hard for us if we don't win, but I'm believing right now. And if you made it all the way to this, let us know. Write in the comments that you actually listened. That'll be cool for us to understand. People have been writing some cool comments in there. Make sure you like and subscribe on the podcast app as well, on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And we'll see you next week.
Awesome. Thank you, squad. Peace out, guys.